And we're recording. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. This is the 17 March 2021 Finance Committee meeting. So far, Finance Committee meetings, members on the meeting right now are myself, Pete Berube, the Vice Chair, Craig Schultz, Jody Garzon, Kathy McGinnis, and Doug Riley. And also joining us are several members of town departments, including the Fire Chief, Chief Barrett, and Police Chief, Chief Sapphire, and Select Board Member, Mr. Germain, Library Trustee, right, Jen? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, Library Trustee.
And Katie's on, so gotcha. So we're going to get right into it so that we can, looks like we have a pretty extensive meeting tonight till about 9:30, hopefully a little bit before that. So we'll get right to it. Chief Barrett, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Good evening. Do you want to start off with emergency management? I mean, it's pretty quick. We can do that one fairly quick and then get into fire rescue if you want.
That's fine.
Okay. So emergency management, for anybody who doesn't know, we have a local emergency management committee. The group meets to plan for pandemics, power outages, snowstorms, uncommon, hazards in town. Under that, I am the emergency management director. We have a very small budget, focuses on $1,500 stipend and $2,500 in supplies and expenses. Those supplies and expenses are used to update the emergency management department. We're trying to upgrade IT, bring it up to 2021. Currently, right now, we just work hand in hand with the Board of Health dealing with the COVID pandemic, and I have been unable to have any in-person meetings, but we have had some virtual meetings. That's about it in the EMD, and I would take any questions on that. Pete, you're muted.
Sorry. And none questions for me. Anybody else from the committee have any questions on emergency management? Okay, Chief.
All right, to the fire rescue budget. I'm going to keep it quick. I'm sure everybody's done their reading, and we'll try to get to the questions. On the salary side of the budget, it's all contractual. We have a union. They are currently in negotiations with, or trying to set up a time to meet with the town administrator. Every other change on there is contractual. And then on the expense side, we try to keep it as close to last year's budget as possible. We did have some movements that we have added into there. One of them is under our medical control. The ambulance is required to have medical control. For the last 10 years, we've been able to have it from Norwood Hospital, and we lucked out because our medical control doctor and our service zone medical control doctor have been the same person. So we've paid that fee. It's $10,000. When Norwood Hospital flooded, we lost that, and we started to scramble, and we were lucky enough to sign on with Metro West Medical Center as our overall medical control. Dr. David Morris. He has a $5,000 fee a year. This year, he was willing to waive it because it was unbudgeted. We weren't prepared for it. And to keep our ambulance license, it was something that we needed. Moving forward, there will be a fee that we need to incur. So we've added that into the medical control consulting services line item. Under supplies and expenses, I'm looking to split that into two lines. Currently, everything comes out of supplies and expenses, which really, a big pot that everything's pulled from. So we're trying to break it up so that we can track things a little bit easier. So our other biggest cost, of course, is medical supplies. So we're trying to break that line item out. We were going to reduce the supplies and expenses line by 10,000, drop it down to 25,000, but then add another line item of medical supplies for 15,000. And in that, we would eliminate the $1,500 oxygen line item. On average, our overall supplies and expenses were budgeted about $35,000. With costs going up and everything with COVID, we've seen that run in the $40,000 to $45,000 range. So this request is to break it out so that we can track, what we truly spend on medical supplies a little bit better. Another new line item that I'm asking for is preventative maintenance contract line item for $23,000. In your package, you should see some of the quotes from the preventative maintenance contracts. Again, the state requires us to have contracts to keep up with our stretchers, cardiac monitors, a lot of our equipment. The biggest one is our trucks overall. We have to send them out to be worked on. The town currently doesn't have an emergency vehicle technician. We would love to use the DPW mechanic, but unfortunately, without those certifications, we can't have them work on the fire trucks. So this would cover annual maintenance to all the trucks in one big umbrella, along with our medical equipment, stretchers, like I said, stair chairs, cardiac monitors. I think preventative maintenance contracts have showed their importance. If we can keep the equipment up to date, have somebody who is responsible for it, as we've seen where we had a problem with the engine in engine 2, I hate saying, but then we would have an area to point a finger at if there was a problem. And that's on the budget line. That's really the big ticket items. I would take any questions before we move to any of the capital stuff.
Chief, real quick, where's the preventative maintenance contract? Where is that on your first page of your spreadsheet?
So it's not on there. It'd be an addition. I didn't have it in that. So it's above, budgeted above line item. And then you'll see at the end of the package, all the quotes are in the back for the contracts. Okay.
And then also, it looks like your uniform costs have gone down quite a bit.
Last year we took some money from the ambulance revenue to outfit the new firefighters. And now that they've been outfitted, we just have to meet the contractual requirements of their clothing allowance and to keep up with the clothing for the call department. So we were able to reduce that by quite a bit.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Kathy McInnes.
Go ahead, Kathy.
If I might ask the chief about the overtime. How much is, Chief, do you know how much has been used so far in FY21?
So under our budget, we have overtime and shift coverage. And if you give me a second, I can look. So as of right now, of the last budget report that we were given, we've used about 47% of the budget, which is about $70,000.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, again, through the chair, for the chief, with the addition of the firefighters and everything, Chief, do you think that the overtime budget, I thought, was going to be a little lower than what it had been? Thanks.
Go ahead, Chief.
Yep, that's our goal. Unfortunately, with call volume, overtime is when we have to call the guys back to work. So again, call volume dictates how much overtime we have. Me and Mr. Schultz had commented on that. Our goal is never really to reduce it all the way, because unfortunately, it's something that's always growing with call volume. We do our best to control it, but if we need to continuously call the guys back, that dictates the overtime.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
Hey, Chief, just curious, how many of your staff, whether it be dispatch or responders, have had COVID in the last year?
So dispatch, I would have to get that from Chief Fire. And on the fire side, we've had about a half a dozen members test positive. We've unfortunately had to quarantine a lot of members due to our direct contact with patients. Luckily, most of the time, our firefighters are going out in full PPE, so we luck out. Those contacts don't matter. It's really the chance when they go into a call and get surprised by a COVID call. But we did have a lot of quarantines over this year.
Okay. Any more questions before Chief Barrett continues on?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jody.
Thanks for putting this together. I'm gonna make a request that I often make, that as your budget gets more complicated, it would be helpful to kind of reformat it a little bit, in the sense of, you know, a lot of your line items, it's hard to tell how it differs from another line item. And I know that you have to track things according to your contracts, but when it comes to making, putting together your budget for the town, it might be helpful to kind of lump a few things together if you can, or just make it so it's a little easier to understand. You know, I've been at this for a while, so I know that while you have your wages overtime and your shift coverage and training overtime, and that those are different things, new people coming in and townspeople may have difficulty kind of following that. And likewise on the expense side, as kind of your expenses get more complicated, you might want to kind of subtotal some of that. So where you have like medical equipment, expenses, and then your administrative expenses for being in the building, and then your staffing expenses, you might want to kind of subtotal that, because it'll be a little bit easier to see trends going forward. But I'm glad to see that we have some clerical wages on here at least. So you don't have to be the one doing it all going forward. Every year it gets better.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, you know, the budget's still 100% mine, but I couldn't agree with you more. That was one of the reasons for asking for the medical supplies to come out. You know, these are line items. These are line items that we're given, and we hope, you know, we can change a few of them. Believe me, having the clerical wages, she's just shocked that everything comes out of supplies and expenses. So it would be great to lump some together, but separate others. I would agree 100%.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, Chief, keep going, please.
Okay, so the capital item that is on for replacement this year, it's something that we've talked about with the capital planning committee over the last few years, getting our apparatus on a replacement schedule, so people know moving forward what's on the horizon and what needs to get replaced, and why. So this year, our request is to replace our second ambulance, our backup ambulance, that now is becoming more of a frontline ambulance, A1. You know, we've talked about this year, you know, for the last 3 or 4 years. We've seen such an increase in second medicals, third medicals, where that ambulance is rolling a lot more than just a backup. It's very rare that it just sits here. And we're starting to see the revenue come in from it. We're also starting to see the wear and tear on it. Our last 2 inspections with the state inspector, he has noted body rot and frame rot. And it was always under the umbrella that, you know, this year would be the year it would be replaced, so he would allow us to continue. I think we're starting to push that envelope, and he kind of wonders in the last one, you know, to be prepared that if it's not replaced, it'll probably be taken out of service. For me, that's a reduction in service that we offer to the town. It would mean, you know, losing that revenue, as well as having to use mutual aid to come in to handle a lot of those calls. if we truly are unable to run that second ambulance. The ballpark figure for it, unfortunately, the last time we replaced one, it was about $265,000. We didn't have to have the $40,000 lifting system that's required by the state because we kind of snuck it in. And unfortunately, this year it is in there and it's required. We have an umbrella because we don't have a solid number because it comes down to the state bidding list. So we have an umbrella number of about $350,000. The big thing is that it takes 185 to 200 days for the ambulance to be built. So we were just looking for approval to place the order, and payment wouldn't be required until it was actually delivered, which would be, sometime in November, or maybe December, depending on time frame and delivery time.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Barrett on the ambulance?
Good question, Mr. Chair, if I might.
It's all yours, Kathy. Go ahead.
Chair, Chief, I don't know if I heard you. If you said it, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. The rollout that you have for the ambulance that you're getting rid of, you can't use that?
I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean?
Okay, the rollout, the thing you slide the patients out with, you slide them into the ambulance without having to lift?
Yeah, we currently don't have that. We just, we don't have that in A1.
Okay,
That's what
okay.
that's how we kind of snuck it in when we bought A2, was we didn't have that system.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, if I might, Mr. Chair, what's the mileage on the A1?
Right now, it's about 139,000 miles.
And the year of it, sir?
2007.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Jody.
I'm looking at the most recent debt schedule that I have from 2019. And it looks like from 2021 to 2022, we have a reduction in total debt service of about 100,000. So that's just, something to keep in mind as well. I just wanted to see, do we have something falling off the debt schedule? Looks like we don't for a couple of years, but it's about 100,000 that gets paid off every year.
Chief, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
Go ahead, Craig.
Would the ambulance funds be used for this? I thought we used ambulance funds for the debt for the replacement of ambulance.
So we haven't ever since it stopped being an enterprise fund, but with the projections we had last time when we hired the 4 firefighters, in our 5-year projection, we should have enough revenue that we can replace the next ambulance with ambulance revenue.
Okay. And you may have said this. I was making notes on thinking about I was thinking about it and making notes. Total cost would be approximately?
They're saying 350. We're hoping we're closer to like 305. It's just right now they haven't set the state buying option that we have through the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts. It's a group building. So they're still taking bids. We're hoping they have that finalized soon.
And so if that was financed over 5 years, if there's 100,000 that came off the debt schedule, this would fit in. Just using the ballpark rule of thumb on it, it would fit into that niche. Okay.
All set, Craig?
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Chief.
And that is all I have.
Chief, I'd like to ask you kind of a question that kind of pertains to some of the overall discussions that many of the committees and boards in town have been having. And you probably have commented on this previously, but I haven't asked the question or heard the answer. And that is, what is your assessment of the overall impact of senior over 55 communities, over 60, whatever the communities, the ones that are being planned or discussed in town, whether it be at the Glen or elsewhere in town, new stuff that's coming on. Can you just characterize what the impact is to the fire department over time in a general sense? You can go into as much specifics as you want, but I'll leave it at that.
Sure. So again, it's the one area that we know is a direct impact on fire EMS. We've seen it already with the Glen and the Acorn Street project. The Glen is just about 100 occupied units. We already have gone there within that time frame that they've been occupied about 62 times for emergency calls. And these aren't routine fire alarms, smoke detectors. These are true emergencies. Some of the people who have moved in are, they're not well, and we've seen that and we're dealing with it. Acorn Street is the same thing. We've gone up there. There's about 26 units that are occupied. And we went there in the last fiscal, so it was even a little bit less. We went there about 21 times, and we're seeing this across the board. That the town of Medway has built a big project on Village Street. They already know they can't handle the call volume. They have Medway Country Manor. They respond there quite often, and we actually go there quite a bit, mutual aid for them. So we've seen a direct impact on it. This was one of the reasons that we went for the SAFER grant, and we got the staffing to the number that we're at to prepare for what we know is coming in. There's a lot of projects on the board. A lot of them are over 55. So we know we're going to be directly impacted. And we've seen that, and it's not just Millis. Millis isn't unique. It's really in all the communities. They're starting to see this happen quite a bit.
Do those, just to follow up, do those drive revenue or deficit?
They drive revenue. Over 55 communities are usually, people with good insurance, and we're able to collect the rate that's required. It's not the Medicare rate. It's the full rate that an insurance company would pay. So we do see a boost in revenue from those calls.
And are you approaching a tipping point where you could be required to have additional staffing or additional vehicles where it would not be a revenue generator, but perhaps a deficit creator?
Well, I think what we've done as a town finance committee, select board, I think we've prepared. I think the last 9 years that I've been chief, we've been preparing for this stuff that's coming through. It's always been on the horizon. I think we're in a great position right now to handle the current call volume and much of the future call volume. I think where we start to run into problems is other towns as well is starting to reach their tipping point. So a lot of mutual aid is going to be provided all around by everybody.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Greg.
I think the tipping point, the only part that can be described as that possibly is the purchase of the second ambulance until these over 55s came in. Because I remember when we had the ambulance, we were just going to run it for a while because it was still in working order. We bought the second one. So now that we've decided we are now a 2 ambulance community, that's the $305,000 item that may not have been needed had it not been for Glen Ellen, but fortunate, or the over 55s in general. But it seems that maybe not this ambulance, but every ambulance going forward, it sounds like with the call volume, it'll be covered from fees. So it's probably just this short-term issue that this year or this ambulance is the only one that we may not have fees to cover it with, but going forward.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm very hopeful that this, this is the last time we have to come to the town to ask for an ambulance replacement, that the revenue will truly be able to support replacing the next one.
Okay, thank you very much. Chief, if you have anything else, I usually like to give presenters the last word. Otherwise, we'll move on. I
think we're good. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to present. And as always, thank you for your support.
You bet. All right, thanks, Chief. Chief Safire, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Obviously, I think we all wanted a refund for 2020. And, that being said, before I get into anything, I just want to, I've been expressing this to a lot of meetings I've been attending. Throughout the pandemic, I just want to thank the police department and the employees that work here, because there was no reduction of service to any residents of Millis throughout the pandemic. And still, it still remains that way. We did make operational adjustments in terms of access to the building, but we did try to accommodate people as much as possible. And there were plenty of contingency plans in the event our department got wiped out with neighboring towns. And just to jump back to Mr. Berubis' question rather earlier to Chief Barrett, we had 12 officers with COVID and 2 dispatchers, and everybody recovered. Margaret, great. So very happy about that. I'll jump right into the salaries for the police budget. The salaries, same as the fire department, all those salary numbers are contractual items. Do you guys want me to do the police, or do you want me to do police salary and then dispatch salary?
Your choice, Chief. Just
Okay.
whatever flows best. You're the one that's done this presentation before, so we're not looking for anything different.
Okay, great. So like I said, the police salaries, contractual. Dispatch, same thing, contractual. Any questions about the salaries for police and dispatch? Perfect.
None by me. Anybody else?
Supplies, expenses for the police department. I kept it the same as last year's numbers. The only increase was under maintenance contracts for $3,000. Licensing fees for the RMS, which is the record management system, they went up. Other than that, the supplies expense line items are all the same. Dispatch is the same as last year for supplies and expenses as well. Questions about supplies and expenses for police or dispatch?
Any questions from the committee? None heard. Press on.
Pressing on. Last year, and I may have asked the previous year to that too, but I know I did last year. The budget, above level service budget request. I've been talking to some other towns, and it just seems like our cruisers, every year we come in for a cruiser. It seems to me that that should be part of the line, like part of the budget. Many towns do it. It helps for planning purposes. We know that cars are coming up. We've worked with the capital planning committee. When I first took the job back in 2016, we were in a real bind. I'm sure some of you folks remembered we had to replace 4 cruisers in one shot. And that's when we introduced a lease program for the cruisers. We're finally just about we're there. We have the cruisers in a good flow right now in terms of replacement. We get 7 years out of a car. We've been capitalizing on the factory warranties, pick up a lot of the work. And thankfully, Mr. Candola and Mr. Wanders down at the DPW have been awesome. They do the routine maintenance for us, such as oil changes, tires, and things of that nature. But all the big ticket stuff, when it does happen, it's been covered by the warranty. We're fortunate to get 7 years out of a car. A lot of towns are less than that because they just simply don't have a maintenance program in place. So we've worked hard to get a maintenance replacement program in place. And this year we are looking to replace car 44. It's a 2014 with just under 90,000 miles on it. Any questions regarding the cruisers?
Lease or purchase, chief?
Either or. I was under the impression that the board or the committee like to lease now. So
I'll tell you that both the topic of leasing, purchasing, and whether or not something like this, which is an ongoing requirement, a known recurring requirement, especially from your fleet, is something that's hotly debated amongst the board. I won't speak for the select board, but that discussion has been had at a tri-board. We discuss it often here. So I don't know that we'll be deciding that here. We certainly won't be doing it by ourselves, but I understand your motivation to have it as part of your budget, and I personally agree with you.
Thank you. But I did get two prices. I got the price to buy it outright, which is $47,872.84, or the lease vehicle program, which is one payment a year for 3 years in the amount of $17,000. It should be $111.52, not what's there. It's a typo.
On the Form 5.
Yes.
Okay.
And after the 3 years lease is up, we own the vehicle for $1. That's how the police municipal lease program works.
Okay.
For the marijuana impact funds, this year, again, I'm requesting that the school resource officer be funded through the marijuana impact fund, in addition to a contractual item associated with the police officers for the marijuana impact stipend. And the third item I did add this year, I'm sure everybody is aware or has at least heard of the police reform on the news. That's going to have a significant impact on our department in terms of training, additional mandated training for all the police officers. And those mandated trainings include de-escalation and disengagement with individuals, mental illness, disability. It's a new training mandate, all separate for the school resource officer. Training mandates for interaction with individuals with autism and intellectual developments. New training mandate on regulation of physical force or our use of force model, and a new training mandate for law enforcement officers on mental health and wellness and suicide prevention. So there's a lot going on there in terms of stuff that's coming down the pike. There's nothing concrete yet. They keep talking about it. I've attended dozens of meetings about police reform. No doubt it's coming soon. So I did put that in there as a marker, because once they pass it, I will definitely go over the training line as it is right now.
Chief, I got a question somewhat along those lines, definitely along those lines. And that is do you think there's an opportunity to partner up with other surrounding police departments, or do you think you're at the size that you need to be just with your department?
Partner up for training?
Yes.
So currently we do train with, we attend in-service training, which is a yearly recertification for all the police officers. And we currently go to in-service with Holliston, Sherburne, Ashland, Medfield, and Millis. So there's 5 towns, and amongst the 5 towns, we share the expenses for the instructors.
So maybe let me clarify, maybe I'm not referring to in-service training as much as I am to the training specific to police reform. escalation, de-escalation, use of force, etc. Specific to that training, is that something that you can partner up with some of those same towns and reduce the cost?
We'll keep the same group with the other municipal towns. And what we do is we take the bill and divide it 5 ways for the instructors, no doubt. But it still will incur overtime amongst the individuals attending.
Okay. Any questions from the committee, please?
Just one, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
The school resource officer, that 94,000, is that a salary plus benefits plus other things, or is that just base salary?
That's his salary.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Chief Sophia, hello.
How's it going?
Is doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Fantastic.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. I just have a question. You mentioned that it's a 90,000 mile. What is that like the cutoff as far as why 90,000 rather than 100, 120? I don't on the vehicles.
That's not a cutoff. That's just, I just usually, each year I come here, somebody asks me what the mileage is on the car that we're looking to replace.
Oh, okay.
It's usually just the time, because these cars are treated a lot differently than your cars.
Right.
Meaning they run. Some of them are running 24 hours a day. And for example, this car I just spoke about tonight, I pulled the repair records today, and in the last year and a half, we spent just under we spent exactly $3,841.95 in repairs in the last year and a half.
Oof.
So-
Okay, yeah, so yeah, it makes sense. The other question was, what was the I'm sorry, I don't have the information right in front of me. What was the cost if we purchased the vehicle outright versus the cost if we lease?
If you purchase a vehicle outright, it's $47,872.84. And if you lease the vehicle, it's $17,111.52 for 3 years.
So 17, 17, 34, 34, and 17. Please don't make me do the math. 51, about 51,000 versus 48.
You typically, they get somewhere, works out to be somewhere around 3,000 and change in interest.
Okay, all right. I guess I would just ask the committee if that $3,000 and change in interest would be beneficial for us not to have to pay and purchase the vehicle outright. That would just my throwing it out, because for how often, how many, every 7 years we're doing that? We're turning around, but purchasing. Okay.
Yes.
So that's cumulative over time. So I would just ask all the committee members to kind of look at that. Maybe it would be beneficial for us to purchase outright.
It's certainly a good point, Joyce, and one that the select board will have to consider, and capital planning committee will have to recommend as well. Well, they won't necessarily recommend funding source, so it will get looked at from the budget, and whether or not it can get plugged in as divide by the lease cost or an upfront cost. We'll get our chance to vote on it, no doubt.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
And Joyce,
Go ahead, Craig.
it doesn't have to be the same every year either. We went into leases for cash flow purposes where we had tricky cash flow problems a few years ago. So there's reasons to consider them and reasons not. So I do take your point though, and I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, is that all you have for us? Not that I'm disappointed. Do you have anything else for us?
Do I get my 2 minutes to say my last?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I just did have one question as I was looking over this.
The chair will recognize you, Doug. Go ahead.
Chief, can you just remind us again, the Quinn bill? What exactly that is? and what it covers, and like what would cause that to go up by a large dollar amount?
So the Quinn bill is an education incentive that police officers receive in the event they have a college degree. And the reason why it went up is because any new officer does not receive that the first year that they're here. That they receive that once they enter year 2.
Okay. And so we have two new hires.
Correct.
And then, so on the personnel sheet, so one of those people is replacing someone who left, leaving a net +1.
So that the numbers that are on there on form 3, that is accurate. We had an officer, but I can't remember if it was I think it was the year before the town approved to add 2 police officers to the department. Since then, we've had an officer transfer out for the state police. We had an officer retire. So those were 2 replacements. And those 2 officers, that one left, one retired, neither of them had a college education. But we brought 2 in, they have college educations. So that's the difference right there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And just lastly, Mr. Chair, may I steal your screen for a minute?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I can't do it, but that's fine. I'll just talk about it.
Deirdre, does Deirdre have the material?
Yeah,
There we go. Now I can do it. Excellent. Can you guys see this PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I'll use my 2 minutes to thank the individuals that I work with, and also just let the residents of Millis know what we've been doing this year in terms of what we've brought into the town this year. $3,000 for an evidence room audit, which we get done every year. It's stamped and certified by a third party. It insulates our department as well as the town from any potential lawsuits. We received $6,000 for bulletproof vests. We get a 5-year shelf life out of those. So we have the entire department divided, broken up rather, so we don't pay out of pocket at all for anybody's bulletproof vests. The grant has been picking those up. Dispatch training grant, $15,652. I appoint a lot of part-time dispatchers, probably 3 or 4 a year, none of which the town pays for. That comes out of the grant. Technology and equipment grant, $34,000, $389. That funding is used to load the cruisers, meaning when I ask for a cruiser from the town, it's just for the cruiser. That money pays for all the equipment that goes into each vehicle. So it does lower the cost of the cruiser substantially. Traffic enforcement grant, we do get a lot of traffic enforcement requests this year. Starting in April, we have a traffic enforcement campaign, and we received just under $12,000 for that. The Edward Berg Justice Grant, we got this year. This is just this grant's available this year only. We were able to buy a number of portable radios that cost $3,000 a piece. So I bought 3 extras to have on hand in case something happens to one of the officers. And we bought a emergency response trailer, which is going to house all kinds of barricades and whatnot in the event we have a critical incident that requires road closures, moving equipment, etc. The pill deposit out in the lobby, the removal of those drugs is paid for in full for this year. So we don't have to pay a disposal fee. They come, pick it up, take it away. Secured $27,000 for implementation of a canine in town. capital achievements. So this is the stuff that I would be coming to ask the town for, and we haven't had to. We got optics for the patrol rifles, plate carriers, for the cruisers, entry kits, ballistic shields. The IFAC is a combat medical kit everybody has now in their cruisers and assigned to them individually. Helmets, in the event we have an active shooter. The officers are protected from head to toe now. The bowler app at $28,000. Bought that in response to police reform. Again, we want to bring a peaceful resolution to any incident. What that does is it deploys an 8-foot Kevlar cord and basically wraps the individual up, just like a present. So if we have somebody with a gun, not a gun, rather, a knife, armed with a knife, it allows the officers to keep their distance and safely take him or her into custody. That was huge to get those. Every officer has one assigned. They will be deployed on the street in April. We bought additional patrol rifles, so every single one of our cruisers in the fleet is set up identical. So if your car is out for service and you get into another one, it's set up exactly the same. And I told you about the portable radios. And lastly, since 2018, we've purchased $513,000 capital equipment for the town, for our department, through asset forfeiture and grants. That's all I have. Any questions?
Chief, I know that a lot of departments look for volunteers to help with their training for things like dogs and bowler wraps. Are you looking for anybody to volunteer for bowler wrap training?
Yes. Would you like to volunteer?
I would, yeah. Thank you. It sounds like fun.
Yes, it's incredible. One of these days when we get back in person, I'd be happy, and because they have been doing it at select board meetings and various other committee meetings across the state. So if you would like to just take a moment out of one of your meetings and do a demo for the community,
I'm sure
happy to do it.
I'm sure there's a list. Just add me to it. I don't need to go to the top. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there somebody else out there? Last
Let's
call.
see if Jermaine get wrapped up at the select board meeting. That'll be good.
It was worth a shot, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you
All right,
very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Okay. Is Kim Tolson on?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Kim. Thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name is Kim Tolson. I'm the director of the library in Millis. I have some slides to share. Am I able to share my screen? Let's see. Oh yeah, looks like I can. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Yep, great. So I'm just gonna go a little bit into kind of the overview of the library quickly, and then talk about some of our accomplishments from the past year, and then go into the budget. So this is our mission, which we have been challenged to kind of fulfill in different ways over the past year, due to changes in how we're able to deliver services. So in terms of our primary services that we provide, free access to physical and online collections, technology access, programs for all ages, safe spaces for all different activities, and then our staff who are key in helping people to access these services. So during the pandemic, like many people, we had to kind of change the way that we were working and providing all of the services to the community. So just to kind of go over how this has worked. So maintaining access to collections included putting more funds towards our digital collections, which we had, but they've been much more heavily used, especially during the time where we weren't offering physical access to library materials, and then implementing curbside pickup services to provide safe access to physical collections to the public. And then continuing to offer a variety of programs in a virtual environment, providing outdoor space for work, Wi-Fi access, socializing by setting up safe spaces outside to do that, and free technology access by creating an appointment-based model for computer use, and as well as I had mentioned Wi-Fi access, lending e-readers and contactless printing service. And then the key to all of this is the staff who have really stepped up in adjusting to all these changes and planning for these new services, and providing extra support to patrons and being able to access these services, which, you know, was a learning curve for a lot of people, staff and the public. And another big part of it is a lot of our volunteers who are older were not able to volunteer during the pandemic. So staff has taken on tasks that we usually have volunteers helping with. So then to talk about some highlights for the last fiscal year and a little bit this year. So we finalized our new strategic plan and developed a pandemic service plan in cooperation with the town Board of Health, and taking into account state guidelines and best practices. I had talked about the increase in use of the electronic resources. So this included reallocating funds and staff time to provide access to this content. And that included a lot of additional electronic and telephone support for using these services. And due to that, we saw a 44% increase in usage of these collections compared with the previous year, and a 22% increase in checkouts of e-materials, so ebooks and audiobooks. And then programming, we redesigned a lot of our core programs to continue virtually, and provided contactless pickup of materials for some of our virtual programming. I have here, we had 131 virtual programs from March through the end of the fiscal year, June of last year. And in the first half of fiscal year 21, we had 176 additional virtual programs. And then in terms of the physical and in-person services, in order to create a space that would be in line with our pandemic plan and the guidelines that we needed to follow, we redesigned the library's physical layout and staff workspaces. We started curbside pickup services on June 3rd. And that's been a very popular, well-used service. Even now, we are offering browsing appointments, but many people still prefer the curbside option. I did also want to mention that, you know, the process for facilitating this safe use of the library during the pandemic has been very intensive in terms of staff time for cleaning, handling additional questions, and you know, normally if people are coming in to check out materials, they kind of do a lot of that themselves, and When we're doing curbside, staff are handling these materials from, when they get the request to pulling it off the shelf, to checking it out, to putting out. So it's a lot more time intensive for all the material circulation. And then assisting with the appointments for browsing and technology use, and monitoring the public following the safety protocols, in addition to all the regular library operations. And then in terms of funding, we managed mandated budget reduction to allow for the least possible impact on services to the community. And then when some of those funds were restored in December, we were able to return to our previous open hour schedule. And we continue to pursue grants and funding, and we were awarded 2 grants in fiscal year 20 for programming, for different programming at the library. So then to get into the budget, I had mentioned during last year's budget process, we were asked to cut our budget down by a flat percentage. And so we ended up below what we had originally requested. And due to this, we had to reduce our Monday morning hours until the fall town meeting, when some of that funding was restored and we were able to add those hours back in. So then looking at this year's request, there's nothing too surprising here. There is about a $20,000 increase from our current budget. So just to kind of break down where that comes from, part of it is just standard required increases that we see every year. And this includes the personnel costs that are contracted, our network membership fees, and the expenditure requirement for library materials that we're required to have for our certification in the state aid program. And then a smaller part of it is asking for funds that were taken out of the budget during the last year's reduction. So this includes around $3,600 for staff time, $1,500 for building repairs, and $675 for supplies and expenses, and $600 for office supplies. So it's not a huge amount, but we were already operating on a pretty tight budget. And as we look to fiscal year 22, we're looking at really returning to more normal operations, where we'd have most of our in-person services. Again, like I had mentioned, we've already been offering browsing and technology use by appointment, and as the vaccine rolls out and restrictions loosen, we see having a lot more volume of people in the building. And we're also looking at offering programming in person again, starting outside. So we're not exactly sure what fiscal year 22 is going to look like, but we do know that we are going to be moving towards being more open. And then the other piece of it is returning to these in-person services and needing to continue to take into account all of the safety requirements and cleaning requirements, while we're also seeing the need to most likely continue some of these contactless services we've implemented for patrons who may still feel more comfortable with those models. So that's going to require more staff time, more need for maintenance and supplies. And then again, some of our volunteers who are in high risk categories. We're not sure when they may be ready to return to their position. So that's another piece of it. So that is the basic budget. Does anyone have any questions about that so far?
Kim, I don't. I've got a couple questions on your budget spreadsheet, which I think I'm guessing that you'll hit that next.
Sure. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions on the slide presentation? Okay, keep going, Kim. Thank you.
Sure. So I can share. Do we have the
We
spreadsheet?
all
I can
have
share
it.
it too. You have it. Okay, so I don't need to bring that up.
You don't. No, that's all right.
Okay. So like I had mentioned, you know, the increases that you are seeing in terms of personnel and the operational costs are kind of what I had outlined. It's just contracted increases, and then basically bring us back to where we were at last year. And we can go through the spreadsheet first if anyone has questions. And I do have some. Yes.
Sure, go ahead. I've got a quick question on the
Sure.
On the spreadsheet, especially on the expenses line, or the expenses side of it. Are those? I think I heard you more or less say that some of those figures may be based on like a catch up the budget line, you know, based on revenue or budget that you may have lost during FY21. Is that the case that you're? In other words, are these estimates of actual costs? Are these based on contract proposals or quotes that you've received, or are they a straight line, you know, increase rate based on a, you know, some assumption or some percentage that's been applied plus whatever you have estimated to catch you up from the budget cut that you took in FY21?
Sure. So some of the lines, like our membership fees and equipment, those are costs that we already have estimates for. So those are pretty much, we know what they're going to be. And library materials, that for our certification, state certification, that needs to be 19% of our budget. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, those are really the big two that I'm looking at.
Yeah. So those are kind of the big ones.
And memberships, do you have the ability to shop those, or are you beholden to whatever memberships that you currently you provide?
Membership, yes. Membership is our participation in the Minuteman Library Network. So that provides for us all of the programs that we use to catalog our collections and all of the circulation software that we use, a lot of our technology support, and as well as for patrons, it provides access to the collections of all the other 42 libraries in the network and their collections, as well as a lot of our electronic collections are purchased as a group. So being a part of the Minuteman network, we're able to offer access to resources that as a small library, we wouldn't be able to afford to do on our own.
Why do you think why do you think that line went over 10%, went up over 10%?
I'd have to look at what the breakdown is. It's a kind of a complex formula that they use based on a lot of different things, including what what our patrons are using in terms of resources. But I think just certain costs go up every year. Like I said, to know exactly what has increased, I know a big part of it is, so a lot of our digital content, this is ebooks and audiobooks, is purchased through the network, and demand for that has gone way up. So that's also included in this. I know that budget has gone up quite a lot. So that is one area that I know has gone up. But like I
Okay.
said, I'd have to check for exactly, what those increases are attributed to.
Okay. I'm just curious as to why, that's a big increase, 10%. I mean, there have been past years where it's gone down actually, but this year appears to be going up over 10%.
Yeah, and I'm happy to follow up.
You have, maybe we can skip down to any above level requests and any capital requests.
Yes. So we have a few requests for marijuana impact funds, and we had originally, when we submitted our budget, not included any of these, just because our focus has kind of been, getting back on track with being able to offer, being able to get all the services up and running again that we kind of had to put on pause. And so we weren't originally planning to request, and like I'd mentioned, focused really on just kind of getting us back to where we were. And when we presented our budget to the select board, they had asked us to look at what it would cost to offer access to the library during hours that we are currently closed. So that includes Thursday nights or Thursday evenings, Friday evenings, and Saturdays during the summer. So those are the three requests that I think you should have for the marijuana impact funds. So these are things that we have asked for in the past. The Thursday evening hours, we've been trying to find a way to offer this for the last several years, because we really do get a lot of feedback from library users that this is a time that they need the library for work and school purposes. It's the one work school night that we close earlier. The rest of the Monday through Wednesday, we're open until 8, and Thursdays we close at 4. So it's kind of right those after school hours, and we're kind of having to usher people out of the building. So this is something, like I said, that we have been looking to add as a service that people have been requesting for many years. And we had kind of put it aside for this year. But when the select board asked us to look at it again, we put it back in, as well as the Saturdays in the summer is another one that people really have been asking for. And
I don't think we have a copy of your HCA request included in our package. So I just ask that you forward that on to either Mike or Deidre, and then I'm sure they'll include it in our materials.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Craig.
I think I found it back in the February 24th meeting materials. I love the way this is all online. There was someplace in here where I saw it and I just closed it and I can't find it a second time. But in one of our prior meetings, it was all detailed out, the whole list. So
okay,
maybe Deidre can just pull that up for us if we need to. It listed it. Oh, February 18th. There it was. February 18th.
Okay, we'll come back to it just because we should have those. We can look at that separately. I don't want to take the time to do it now. We're falling behind schedule, but she's explained it, and we can review the material, before the next meeting.
And I think this is one of the good uses for the funds also, because it's an experimental thing. If it works, we have several years to see what kind of return we get on the investment of the money. And if there is a big impact, then by the time that goes away, we'd have to figure out how to absorb it in the budget. But we have a few years to try it, pilot it, and see if it is actually going to give us the numbers. So,
Okay. Kim, you have a Form 5, I think. You wanted to go over that? It was for, looks like some,
Let me pull that up.
maybe you touched on it in your presentation, your slides, but the public
So that's
computing contract.
the equipment, yeah. Bear with me just a second. So the public computing contract, that is, so all of our computers that we have available for patron use, those are managed by Userful, and they basically, it's like a thin client desktop solution where they kind of manage everything. So it does like the library card logons, and it's hooked up to the printing. So that's been a good solution for us due to the fact that we have very limited in-house technology staff.
Is this an
And
expansion or a replacement?
so this is something that we have every year. It's just the contract for the maintenance of the system.
Okay.
So nothing here is new. These are all contracts that we're just renewing for the new year. So the public computing, wireless printing services, Plymouth Rocket is our software for the room reservations and museum pass checkouts. And then we have a line in there just for replacements of other patron technology that we supply in-house. So that would be like the self-checkout machines, the catalog computers, peripherals like keyboards, mice, stuff like that.
Okay. Any questions for Kim?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Jody.
So you mentioned that the library materials line item is basically mandated as a percentage of the library's budget, but that an increasing amount of library materials are actually coming through the Minuteman network. Has there been some discussion on the state level of kind of changing that formula to allow for greater use of digital materials that might not fall under that materials line item?
Yeah, so we do, we can use, actually included in that library materials line is our electronic resources that we subscribe to as a library outside of the network, and any like additional e-content that we're purchasing as a library. So the purchasing that's done on a network level doesn't factor into this percentage, but anything that we purchase in-house would apply in that category. So a portion of that is for electronic content as well.
Thanks. It just seems that it's kind of an antiquated model where digital resources can be shared across a network and don't necessarily have to be physically owned by one library in order for its patrons to have access to those materials.
Right. And it should be easier to share between libraries, but there's all these restrictions in place because the owners of the content still need to make their money. So
sure, yeah, you need to protect copyright.
Yeah.
And
right, exactly.
and all of that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the committee? Okay, nothing heard. Kim, last word for you.
Last words. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time tonight. And thank you for keeping us on schedule.
You bet. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to go to Rich Nichols for Planning Board article discussion. Hi, Rich.
Hello, everybody. Sorry to disappoint you, but I have two quick articles. I know that'll probably make you sad, but the first article would be we want to change the size of parking spaces, which are currently listed as 9 foot wide and 21 foot long, to 9 foot wide and 19 foot long. This will allow less impervious space and would allow the applicant to maybe put another parking spot or two in. This is a waiver that we grant on a regular basis. So since we grant a waiver every time, we decided it made sense to just change the bylaw and make it so it was consistent with the waivers that we grant every time. The second one is we wanted to add a compact car parking for parking lots that had more than 20 spaces. With that, we did allow 33% of those spaces to be compact cars if so desired. And if it was less than 20 spaces, that wouldn't be permitted. In this, it reduces the impervious area. It allows them to get more parking spaces. And this is up to the developer. If they say, hey, we want to do it, they're allowed to do that to add those extra compact cars parking spaces. Obviously, they do that at their own risk. So if they decide to put 33% as compact car and they don't have the ability to get the rest of the vehicles in, they've kind of done themselves a disservice. So those are the two articles that we have to present, and that's it. Any questions?
Okay, I don't have any,
I have a question.
but I suspect the committee does. Go ahead, Jody.
Yep.
So in your in the compact car amendment in section 16C, you have compact car parking spaces shall be located in one or more contiguous areas and shall not be intermixed with spaces designed for full-size cars.
Correct. We don't want them to put, one compact car at one end, one compact car. It's going to be all at the same space to make it so that, they can't just use it as a, to try to get more spaces in their parking as a convenience.
And that'll be determined by basically the plot map?
Yes,
Oh.
they'll have to submit it. So they'll submit it. We have it reviewed by our consulting engineer. And the other thing is, which I forgot to mention, is that any of the space that they are able to save with the compact car, what we do is we'd say, hey, you have to, give us the square footage that a normal parking space would take. That area that is the reduction, so whatever they save has to go to open space. So, if they decide, hey, we want to put compact cars in because there's less pavement, we gain that space back in open space.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Riley.
this may be a silly question, Rich, but this only applies to new projects, correct?
This would be, if they're redeveloping, it would be basically new projects, yes.
So somebody can't come in that has an existing parking lot that they want to go and reline and say, expand, actually, if they want to expand it, for example, and be able to take advantage of that 33%, basically, if they were going to repave or reline an existing parking lot?
Well, that's a good question. Honestly, I'd have to look into that. I mean, if they relined it, the impervious surface is not going to change.
Correct.
Whether they could gain more spaces, for example, if, like, say, Rockies decided to reline and they said, we want to make 33% compact cars, I'd have to check to see if they could do that. I'm not sure necessarily what the gain would be on that, yeah, that is a good question. I'll have to follow up on that.
It's probably stupid, but it just
No.
popped into my head, and I
No,
I
it's a
figured
good
I'd
question.
ask. Yeah, so
Rich, that does bring up kind of a question that I have is, I believe that there would be there's a potential cost savings to the developer by doing this. And my understanding is that on occasion, when there's a cost savings that's requested by a developer and approved by the planning board, that the funding associated with the savings goes into either a sidewalk or a tree fund or some fund. Is that contemplated here?
Not necessarily. We're talking minimal square footage. So we're changing, I can't remember exactly, it's like 30 square feet. So if you did 30 square feet times, 33% of 20 cars, the amount that would be saved would be minimal. What we were looking at it towards was more of an incentive to get people to open a business in Millis. So we're interested in trying to get more retail, more things that will bring the town money. And if this is a simple way to, to get more people to come in, hey, I can get a parking lot and I can get an extra few spaces. Gee, that makes Millis a little more attractive. That was our thought, is that, we would be able to be more attractive to business. It wasn't necessarily thinking of, like a waiver where we would ask for, like you said, the sidewalk fund or the tree fund. This was more of a business development type of outlook.
Okay. I appreciate your answer. And just to add on that there's a potential savings for the stormwater runoff as well, since we use impervious rates to calculate that. But I do understand your answer.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Anybody? Go ahead,
Yep.
Kathy.
At the planning board public hearing, Mr. Chairman, I spoke out against the proposal of the, not so much the compact car, but the shortening the length of the parking spaces. And it was my understanding, through the chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Chair Nichols, you were going to go to the police chief to see the number of accidents in Roach Brothers cars backing out into each other. And I'm wondering if you've been able to do that yet?
We did, actually. The day after you asked us to do that, we did that. And the chief replied that that was a private property and that they don't necessarily note that information. So we did do that. Actually, what I can do is I can forward you that email. So that would answer your question.
No, that's fine. It's just that I'll share with the FinCom what I shared with the planning board is that I've witnessed at least one accident of cars backing out into each other at Roach Brothers. And the fact that, if I might say, the shortening the length of the parking space, Millis is the type of town that tends to have SUVs, minivans, and larger pickup trucks with longer lengths, anywhere from 221 inches. A crew cab has 232 inches, and the current bylaw is 252 inches, and they want to lengthen it, shorten it by many feet. And I don't see how this is protecting drivers. And what Chairman Pete Berube said about the waiver granting, I think it should remain that way, because when someone comes in and asks for a waiver on parking spaces, yeah, we'll give you the waiver. What are you going to give us in return? Because they're saving money. I can't, with all due respect, Chairman Nichols, I can't understand how a business will come into Millis because they've got 3 more spaces. They're coming in to they're asking you to save money. That's what the bottom line is, to save money on the stormwater, I could go on and on. I just don't know who this benefits, and zoning bylaws should benefit residents of Millis. And I don't see anywhere, what are we getting for this? And the other part about the mini ones that I had a concern about was that you were gonna, the planning board was requiring that there be space replicated somewhere else to make up for that open space. Well, is it dry open space or is it gonna be a swamp? I don't think these bylaws, with all due respect, are ripe for voting, but the townspeople will have to vote. But I won't be speaking in favor of this bylaw, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else? All right, Rich, thank you very much for letting us ask you some questions and presenting.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, good night.
Good night. Carol, we're going to move swiftly to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Earlier this evening, Mike Gazinski had forwarded over the information regarding the CARES Act. I gave a breakdown. What I had him send over was a spreadsheet that contained 3 tabs for the 3 submissions that we've done to the state of Massachusetts for the CARES Act money. We received the CARES Act money. This was just a matter of submitting what we spent the money on. So far for the 3 submissions, we've sent in $439,577 worth of expenses. If that information was disseminated to everybody, you'll see the actual line by line of how this has to get submitted to the state.
Carol, can I ask you just pause for 1 second? Deirdre,
Sure.
is that document in your latest email? Because I know there was one that came out right before the meeting started.
It is. I didn't realize there were 3 tabs on it. I was kind of scrambling to get everything online.
No problem. No problem. I'm just going to try to help us navigate to it real quick. That way we can make the most of Carol's time and look at it while she's talking. So hold on 1 second, just see if I can find it.
I am.
Okay, so I do see it. The CARES Act expenses, January through March.
So there'd be one tab January through March. There's another tab that's June through March through June, and then there's another tab. I'm sorry. One tab should be March through June. The next tab should be March through September, and then there should be one that's October through December. And
we have it as
a PDF.
We have it as a PDF, so that's okay. Go ahead and keep going.
Same information. It's the same information, but it's all. Yep. This is all itemized by invoice that gets sent to the state. So
okay.
That's all of the monies that we've spent through December 31st are included in that spreadsheet. There was another. The next filing that we need to do is on June 4th, and that will be from the January through March timeframe. In the January through March timeframe, I sent us a PDF of the invoices that have been processed from January 1st to today. So we have additional monies to put in. In total, right now, after everything is accounted for that we have in our system, we've spent $494,852, and we have an availability of $234,000 left of the CARES Act, and that's for just what has been submitted. If departments reported items and haven't submitted them to us yet, they aren't included in these numbers.
Carol or Mike, I'll let you guys decide who answers this. What is the plan to spend that last or the identified $234,000 that is available? I mean,
Mr. Chairman,
are there projects ready to be executed that are waiting, or why hasn't that money been expended yet? Go ahead.
well, Mr. Chairman, just to make sure the Finance Committee is aware of the recent, when I say recent, back in, I believe it was the December timeframe, the Congress approved the extension of the use of those funds until December 31st of 2021. We do anticipate, like I say, the primary use of those funds will be for any need relating to Board of Health, vaccinations, any additional PPE that is needed. The annual town meeting, again, will most likely be outside, so there are costs associated with that. And I have been in discussions with the health director about uses of those funds. So we can certainly provide continuing updates as to the use of those funds, but we have until December of 2021 to expend the rest of those funds.
So I'm aware of that, and please forgive me for sounding critical. It's not my intent. It's been a tough year for everybody. But I was, you probably remember, I was just concerned that that the funds weren't expended by the deadline. I think we got lucky that the deadline was extended, and I get it. You know, there's plenty of time to spend $234,000, but I just think we ought to be doing it deliberately. And candidly, I think we ought to spend it quick and ask for more, because if the town can come up with legitimate requirements when there's federal dollars available that have been allocated and not executed, we ought to be asking for more, not leaving money on the table. That's just my own personal philosophy on it.
Right, I will
for legitimate requirements. I'm not saying we're putting in, you know, non-COVID related expenses. That's far from what I'm saying.
Right, I will, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just state that we did have contingency plans to utilize and encumber those funds at the end of December. And we were able, we held off on that because we did believe there was a high probability that Congress would extend that, and they did. I mean, we do have some possible, we are aware of some additional possible uses of those funds. But at this point, we wanted to make sure we had ample funds to deal with really the most important aspects of COVID through the Board of Health and any vaccination costs associated that the town may do. We certainly were a little surprised when the state changed its approach and stopped providing vaccines to small local clinics. So that kind of threw a curveball at us, but you know, we are working with the Board of Health to again properly utilize those, and I feel we will be able to use most, if not all, of those funds between now and December. We've also obviously the $1.9 trillion aid package that was just approved by Congress. There's a lot of additional funds that will be coming our way, so we'll be looking at those as well. And it's a little early for me to say exactly how we utilize those. We're still studying the paperwork to find out what the restrictions are and how we can utilize those funds. But I expect those funds ultimately be well over $1 million for the community. The question is what strings are attached and how we can use those funds.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Carol, anything else?
Last week you had asked me about the town tree fund and also the sidewalks. So I did have, had Mike send that information over to you and Deirdre earlier this evening as well. Hopefully that got circulated. I can go through the information now. Which one do you want, tree or sidewalk?
Actually, Carol, unless you insist on going over it with us, I think we can review that on our own.
Okay, that's great.
No, it's pretty simple.
Okay.
And if we have any questions, we'll follow up.
Okay.
either one-on-one or next week.
Okay.
Okay, is anybody have anything that they want to ask or comment on either CARES or tree or sidewalk funds?
I was muted. What is the balance, if any, in the sidewalk fund? I got a note from Mr. McKay because I contacted him after last week's meeting after you requested that.
So the balance is $50,820. He's well aware of what the balance is. We went through this exercise with him last May. So it hasn't changed. No other funds have been used from that account. So that's the balance as of today. And as of the last time money was spent out of this account for an expense was in January 2013. Last time money was put into the account was October of 2018. So up until 2013, you had probably $600 balance, and then you received money in 2015, 2018 for different development projects, and that's how you arrive at the $50,820.
Okay.
So I'll make a friendly request to the select board to consider that there's funds available, and that as I said last week, that they consider a warrant article to spend some of that money and improve some of the sidewalks or expand some of the sidewalks in town. Okay, Carol, I think that's it. I think we're going to go on to warrant article discussion with Mike.
Okay, have a nice evening. I'm still going to be on the call, but
Thanks, Carol.
I'll be muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have any sweeping updates for the committee this evening. I can tell you that my office has been actively at work putting together a fine version of the warrant with the full article language. And I expect that to be presented to the select board on Monday. And you will have a much more complete with all language version of the town meeting warrant for your meeting next Wednesday. There may be some changes in the warrant articles, the warrant numbers. Some of those articles will be rolled within the capital article. Other articles may be withdrawn from the warrant. So we're still reviewing all that. And this, as I said, the select board is going to be discussing that on Monday. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, but again, I didn't have any updates worthy of sending additional information out to the finance committee for your meeting this evening.
That's fine.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm on the Charter Review Committee, and I think we're presenting, and so is Doug, actually. I think there's a presentation in 2 weeks to the Board of Selectmen. Is there a possibility that those charter review things would be included in this warrant article, or are we assuming they'll be going a later one? I just wasn't sure if the select board.
It's actually Monday, Craig.
Oh, it's Monday?
Yeah, it is Monday. It is Monday. So if you want to put it in your calendar.
It wasn't my calendar. I didn't look at my calendar. I see how I lost a week.
So I cannot say. Certainly, it's theoretically possible. That's up to the select board to determine if they feel that this is the appropriate time to put that forward. But they will have the information to consider and make a determination.
I guess the question was, I guess not seeing it on the list does not preclude the fact that it may be on the list.
That's correct. The select board could still put it on as a warrant article if they choose to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the committee? Questions for Mike? Okay, so back over, so I'll take it from here. On article assignments, actually real quick before I get to that. Mike, if you could stay on, we're gonna go through some draft assignments and we may have a question or two for you. I kind of doubt it.
Sure.
But we're gonna do some draft assignments for articles 1 through 35, and this would be subject to change as just discussed. And I would ask that members speak up. One, to help me remember which articles typically go to the chair. I think it's the operating budget and some others. So we're just going to go through them quickly. This will go quickly with people stepping up and saying, I'll take that one, or volunteering somebody else. I don't know. We'll see. But I want to get it done now. So unpaid bills. I don't think of much.
One of our newest people.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. We're down to 8 members. Everybody's on tonight, and I think I just heard Katie.
Yep, I'd love nothing more.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional wages and expenses.
I'll
Is
take.
that part?
That usually, yeah.
Does that go with the budget, Craig, or no?
It typically has. In most cases, articles 2 through 8 typically, well, usually 4 and 5 aren't thrown in there, the union contracts. But typically, the additional wages, operating budget, sewer, water, and stormwater have gone to the chair.
Okay.
Right.
So let's see.
Professional
2. So let me just go one at a time. 2, 3. 4 and 5 we'll skip and come back to. 6, 7, 8.
Yep.
Yep.
It's just about the right number too, Pete.
Good, because I'm tapped out. All right. Back to 4 and 5. SEIU contract ratification, number 4. Typically, that person would work with Mike to get as much information. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
That's correct. I mean, this is assuming we're ready to move forward at that point. So there is still a chance that Articles 4 and 5 will be either removed or passed over at town meeting based on where that all is.
Excuse me.
I'm thinking of a name. Yep.
Is there any way of Deidre putting those up so that we can see them?
Sure. Yeah. Joyce, they're in the meeting materials. So if you go to the link that's in her, it's the second to last one, article list, May 21. Sorry about that. So if you go to the bottom of the agenda, there's a link that says meeting materials.
No, I understand that. I just didn't know if there was a way of posting it so that while you're talking about it, we can see it.
It is up on the screen now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks,
Sorry about that. Okay. So SEIU contract ratification. How about Jim Boardman?
Sure.
And the same thing for the firefighter one.
Okay. 4 and 5.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Number 9, consent agenda. This is a lot of reading, but it's very, as I recall, pretty basic revolving funds, unless, of course, it gets consented not to be read, right? Right, Jody?
Yes, that is much more efficient use of town meeting time, I would say. But-
Yep. One article, or you just bought yourself 7. You know?
Exactly.
So who's going to volunteer for number 9?
I think I actually did this one in the fall. I'd be happy to take it again.
Thank you very much, Katie. Number 10. Community Preservation Historic Resource Reserve Fund, which probably would have been Sean. 10 and 11 will probably stick together.
I've done
Jody, can I?
in the past if you're interested in that at all, but I don't need to.
Jody, how do you feel about that one? 10 and 11.
I'm fine with those. They shouldn't be terribly difficult.
I think I'm asking because I think you were our previous rep to Sean on CPC.
I wasn't.
I think I might have been. I think there was a long lull in between.
There was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna go with Craig. I'm gonna
Okay.
go back to Craig. We'll if you guys would kindly keep a tally of the ones I've assigned to you, and once I get above the 35 divided by 8 of us, you know, we're close. If I get to excess, let me know, please. 12, independent audit.
I would
Really
recommend
basic.
12, 13, and 14, maybe Joyce.
Okay.
Yep, they're kind of yearly things that usually, it's the same thing every year for the most part.
Joyce, you okay with those?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Left off at 14. 15, capital items. I'm the capital planning committee rep. I would say I will stick with that. Not that I'm looking for more, but it's going to be more work for anybody else to figure out what we're talking about, whereas I've been participating in that committee all along. So unless there's any objections, I'll keep 15.
I do not have an objection.
No objections. No official objections heard. All right, 16, tree pruning and removal, which we haven't had an article discussion on these or any background information on this one yet. Or actually, it's probably looks like maybe it's a actually that's a funding article that's been talked about. Any volunteers for that?
I don't mind doing it.
Okay.
That's Joyce.
Yep.
Yep. Road maintenance and repair.
I'll take that on, Mr. Chair.
I
Captain
knew you
McInnes.
were. I knew I was expecting.
I was going to
you to say
volunteer
that.
you if you
I
didn't
was
say
gonna
anything.
volunteer.
I was already writing it down.
18.
Give it to you.
18, 19, and 20 will stick together. School leases. And nobody heard, so I'm gonna go with. How's about Doug on those?
I was gonna take 22 through 26.
Oh, so you just stepped up for 18 through 26. That's incredible.
Well, 18 and 19 aren't gonna.
Okay, so
Hey, Pete, I can take 18 through 20.
is that Jim?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, you can
Okay.
put me on for 26 too, right?
So Doug, you're volunteering for 21 through 26?
If you want me to do 21 as well, sure.
I wouldn't mind 21 if you're looking for if you want to take 22 through 26. I kind of have a thing for open space or parcel purchases or whatever.
Okay, all right, we'll go with that. Craig, you've got 21. Doug, you've got 22 through 26. Okay. Deirdre, we'll recap this separately offline and we'll just make sure I got it right. Again, these are subject to change, but 27.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
When are we voting on these?
Weeks from now. We don't
Okay.
even have a real warrant,
Okay.
official warrant to vote on. These are just assignments so that people can plan for. Listen, what's in my experience, what's happened on these is we'll listen to them and we don't necessarily glean as much information from the first go around.
Yeah. I think you can be specially attuned to your warrant articles when they come up. Not that you wouldn't be to roads anyway, Kathy, but.
Well, I have a real issue, Mr. Chair. I'd like to explain further and perhaps submit a memorandum about the parking zoning bylaws, if I may, at the appropriate time.
I think we lost the chair.
Yeah.
That means that I have now assumed the mantle of waiting for him to come back and saying, everybody be calm.
Did he fall off his chair?
He doesn't come back.
He zoomed off his chair.
During the meeting.
He's souped up.
Well, we can start going down again still with but I wasn't paying attention to where we left off.
I think we're at 27.
27.
All right. I wasn't keeping track of who took anything. I was not expecting to have to assume this mantle right now.
Yep.
Mr. Vice Chair, I can take that one if no one else wants it.
Pete's
So
being asked to be let back in.
Oh, perfect.
I vote no.
Thank God. We're floundering. We're floundering, Pete. I wasn't paying attention to where you left off, and then all of a sudden you were gone.
Just when I got my sword.
Sorry, sorry about that. I don't know what I did, but it was operator error. Okay, so my experience is that we don't necessarily ask all the questions that we need to the first time around in order to present these like we would at town
Okay.
meeting. And so I just, my idea is that we would assign them up front so that especially you'll pay a special good attention to being able to get as much information you can as on the first time around. So that's all. Okay, Kathy, is that okay?
Yes, please. Yep.
Okay. Doug, 26, 27, bylaw, waiver of town building project permit fees.
I had offered to take that when you fell off your chair.
28, did you volunteer? Did you keep volunteering?
Tour
Town bylaw.
bylaw.
Yeah, these are yours. You're on that committee,
Yeah,
correct? Okay.
that's probably going to come off the list, Mr. Chair. We've presented a alternative to the selectmen that we will discuss on Monday.
Okay. All right, so
But I'll put
27.
my name on it in case they stay with it.
Yep. So I've got you for 27, 28, number 29, update emergency response plan. If I don't hear from somebody, I'll take it just because I have a little bit of emergency management background, but I don't really think it's necessary. And I think people are going to get tired of listening to me.
And I can put it on for right now if you want. I'll
Thank
take
you.
it. Yeah.
Okay. That is Craig. Okay, 30. PFAS, which not sure, well, I'll mention it later. So PFAS is the water treatment issue that we've been listening to Mr. McKay for quite a while on.
I think that should be Kathy or myself. We sit on that committee, and I'm
Yeah,
fine.
fairly in depth, and we'll get a lot of interest and needs a lot of digging into. So
Mr.
Kathy, go ahead,
Chairman?
Mike. Yep.
I just wanted to let the finance committee know that we just found out last evening that we were awarded a grant from the DEP for $197,000 for the treatment design for PFAS Article 30.
That's
Yep,
great.
for design of
That makes-
wells 1 and 2. That's right.
Yeah, that makes it a heck of a lot easier article to present. I'd like to receive the motion to Kathy have it, not.
Well,
Craig
you
or
can be the
Kathy?
chair and I'll be your wingman, okay, Craig?
I'll take it if that's
Yeah,
that's
it's
fine,
your-
Kathy, I'll take it for sure. Thank you.
Okay, 31. So I got Craig for 30, 31. Drainage on Birch Street.
I think
who's
that's the
short?
stormwater fund.
It is, yep. Which Doug is very knowledgeable on.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. 32, sale of land, Acorn Street.
I wouldn't mind having that one, but.
What is that? What is that one?
Oh, the sale of land, never mind, I'm sorry, I take that back. I was-
Mr. Chairman, that's quite preliminary. And the
That's-
selectmen have really not discussed it at all, but it was simply a request we received from an individual who's interested in a piece of unused town property. So
So it's
I
separate and
can't-
distinct. Obviously, it's
It
not
is separate
the
and distinct.
61A. Yeah.
That's correct. It's a totally different piece of property. I really have nothing to really add on that this evening, other than say that it's still under discussion, and I'm not sure if it'll still be there a week from now, but it just it's there as a placeholder right now.
I don't mind taking that one.
Okay, Jody, 32.
Yep.
Jody,
I'll take
30.
33 too.
Jody, 33. Who am I shortchanging before I get to the end and then,
I only have 2, so I don't mind taking all the rest.
well, you know, you're getting 36.
I also have 2, so.
The
I've got a little
Medicare and
Okay.
Medicaid is an
This-
easy one usually, and so is the I don't know.
Right, the last 4 are just, super easy.
Oh, wait, hold on. There's a numbering problem. We have 34, 35, 36, 35.
35. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, so
We should
Katie,
put-
I'm gonna give Katie,
37.
I'm gonna give you 34.
Okay.
And the first 35, we'll call it 35A.
Okay.
Nobody in the history of the finance committee has ever done a better job at OPEB than Jody, so she gets that. And-
Shouldn't that be the very last one though, since there's no money?
All I have to do is read last year's notes.
Jody,
And
if
then
you ever leave the FinCom, can you leave those notes in your book that you're writing?
Yeah, gladly. Yeah, I don't know
so
if
this,
we'd want to rearrange
Go
OPEB
ahead,
and
Jody.
stabilization.
we'll
Recommend
defer
that
to,
to the select board. Yeah.
yeah, we'll defer. Mike can bring that back, and obviously some renumbering has to be done here anyway. So stabilization fund is the last one.
Yeah, I can do that too. I have it all written up already.
Okay, all right. All right, so again, we're not gonna get this perfect. It's just a first iteration to help you guys know who you especially need to pepper with questions, or who you need to get in touch with after the presentation at the Finance Committee to ask follow-up questions. And just to give you a little bit of a heads up, next week, we're gonna hear from, bear with me for 1 second, Recreation Department, IT, Town Clerk, Assessor's Office, Finance Office, Veteran Services, and perhaps I'll try to get with Deidre and Mike later in the week. And if there's any non-department article proponents or originators, that we'll try to invite them in either the 21st, 24th, or the 31st, because this was really just the schedule that I have, the notional schedule that we worked the first time around was really just departments, but there could be some other, non-department type articles that we would want, like this one that just popped up for Acorn Street purchase, land purchase. We would need to find something out more, obviously more on that. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, moving right along, none heard. 9 o'clock, we are back on track. Liaison to the Community Preservation Act Committee. Not sure how often they meet, frankly, but they are involved in quite a bit, and increasingly more with some of the issues that are coming up in town. I look for a volunteer before I ask for a nomination. So are there any volunteers to serve on this committee? And if anybody could real quick, just tell us how often they meet.
I was on it years ago and it was once a month, but I don't know if that's gotten more or less since then. So I honestly don't know.
It's probably less. It's probably like, probably 4 times a year, maybe.
With possibly a couple meetings around budget time when they're making their recommendations. I think it's a great committee to be on. I mean, honestly, you learn a lot about the history of the town, the open space, the housing issues. It's really a very good committee to be on. And it's very informative. I recommend.
I'm sorry, what's the name of the committee?
It's the Community Preservation Act Committee. So
CPA.
It's not exactly the acronym, but Community Preservation, Joyce.
Doug's waving at you.
And I don't know who the chair is. I know Nate Maltinsky's on the committee. He may be the chair. I apologize for not knowing that.
Yes, he is the chair.
He is
I'd
the
be
chair.
interested in if putting in my name for nomination if you feel it beneficial to our committee.
Doug was waving earlier. I don't know if he was trying to say he'd do it or if he was saying, don't pick me, you know?
I was volunteering.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
like
so
you said, it's a potential for learning more.
Yeah.
So Doug, you do understand that the sidewalk committee is going to take on a new life, like way, it's going to surge in your time requirements.
Well, I think we should use Community Preservation Act funds to build sidewalks.
Okay.
All
right, so there's,
Can't, Mr. Chair, you can't.
there are 2 volunteers. Can I please have a?
Mr. Chair, can I just please ask, well, who's on what liaisons? I haven't seen a list or anything. Is it time
Yep.
to maybe put new names forward or, rotate, side out, rotate?
Well, we are. That's a great question. We are working on that, and it will be included in our policies and procedures. I can tell you that I can't remember. I did read that today. Didn't see the actual list in there. Jody, that list of actual assigned members wasn't in there, was it?
It only talks
Just
about
refers to the
the
lengths. and the-
committees that like that there's liaisons and there's representatives. And so the
Right.
Community Preservation Committee has a Finance Committee liaison and the Capital Planning Committee has a representative. I could not find language anywhere else which mentioned a Finance Committee liaison or representative. Those were the only two committees I could find language about. But there, it may be buried in the unspoken rules and regs of other committees, but you know, like the sidewalk committee, you know, that might not be part of the finance committee. I don't know. So I
Okay.
think by putting
So-
this together, we might get some more information.
Yep. So my answer to Kathy's question is I still want to appoint a member to the Community Preservation Committee tonight. But at the same, I also want to make sure that we document those representatives and liaisons. And there is a difference, which is spelled out. And so that we know exactly when the term is and et cetera, so that there is a record of that. I think that's important, Kathy. So
Thank you.
I hear two volunteers. Let you guys have one last discussion on it before I take a nomination or a motion.
What, for us to talk, Mr. Chair, each of us?
Whomever, it's open floor right now, open mic.
Well, I'm not a representative of the Finance Committee to any other committee. And I just feel it would be beneficial to have some FinCom representation on that committee. And I'm quite familiar with it, having been one of the original appointees. A lot's changed since I've been on it, though, so it would be still a learning experience for me. The CPA Act itself has changed a lot in response to what the communities had requested. So thank you for your consideration.
I had just suggested I would do it because I think it's an interesting area that I don't know a lot about. And I think it would be worthwhile to expand my knowledge base. That's basically my thinking behind that.
Okay. First and foremost, I thank you guys for volunteering. I don't care whether or not, I certainly do care, but it's very important to me that we have volunteers, that people willing to step up and do more than the minimum. So I appreciate you sticking your neck out a little bit and devoting some of your time. So thank you both.
I'm not going to arm wrestle Kathy over this. So
I understand.
And you know, I mean, I'm involved in a number of other things, not, you know, outside the finance committee. So, you know, if Kathy really wants to do it, you know, I'm perfectly happy to let her do it.
Okay, can I have a motion?
Move to nominate Kathy McGinnis for CPA rep, hearing that Doug is stepping aside.
Stepping aside from nothing.
Can I get a second?
Insult you, Doug, by picking her over you, because I wasn't going to pick it.
And I heard Katie second. Any further discussion?
Can I trade the CPC for sidewalk?
Well, my understanding is the sidewalk committee was not re-voted on by the selectmen, so it actually doesn't exist, if I understand the process correctly.
All the more reason, Doug.
So I'll stay on the sidewalk committee. Thank you.
Oh, 50 grand you have.
Real money.
Okay, this concludes the discussion. All those in favor of nominating Kathy to serve as the CPC or the Community Preservation Liaison, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Thanks, Doug.
Abstentions? There you go. Deirdre, you got all that?
I did.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Let's see, I skipped right over, and nobody called me on it, the Finance Committee Policies and Procedures Handbook. Maybe Jody was waving and I wasn't paying attention. Okay, so on the Policies and Procedures Handbook, I did read it. It is very much, you know, probably a 90% document. and that we don't need, and based on discussion we had last week, I agree that we don't need committee time on this, subcommittee time on this. I did give Jody a couple of feedback items that I asked for her to amend or edit before she disseminates it. And so I think she's done that. And so she'll disseminate it to each of you. I asked that you take the time to review it, and I'm not sure if we'll do that for next week or take 2 weeks to do it. I just want to remind us that we can't review the document and comment on it we just need to be cognizant of the open meeting rules. So we shouldn't be any reply to alls to the dissemination of that document. It's probably already posted on the meeting materials, or if it isn't, it will be.
Yeah. I don't have a copy of it.
I'll send
Okay.
it to Deirdre, and
Yep.
then Deirdre can send it out to everyone.
Yep, and Deirdre or Jody, whomever can please just put a draft watermark on all the pages.
Sure.
If you could kindly do that, and then just send it out, and then I'll look at the calendar and we'll come up with a realistic, suspense or deadline, for lack of a better term, where we can provide our feedback, and then we'll have a discussion on it. I would suggest in 2 weeks, not next week, but in 2 weeks. It's 10 pages. It's not a hard read. So, and for your comments, we would look for you to do a couple things. You can do markups, pen and ink, and scan it. You can put track changes on your is it a PDF or a Word document, Jody?
I can do it both. I'll probably do it as PDF to send to everyone,
Yep.
just because that shows up on screens better than Word
Sure.
documents.
Yep. Okay. So just you can figure that out, how to add and edit comments. You can just write stuff down. One of the things that I asked Jody to do was to outline number the paragraphs for easy reference. So if you do make comments, if you could, if you type them up in a separate document or handwrite them, whatever, you just make a reference to the paragraph, section, paragraph, line that you're referring to, just for ease of editing. Okay. Any questions on that? And if you see, lastly, from me anyway, if you see anything, if you feel there's an omission, please add what you recommend be added to the document. It's not just what's there. If there's things that you want to see added to the document, please include that. As Mike said, there's a little bit of kind of an announcement in the sense that Jim McKay forwarded to some information that the grant had been received on the PFAS design funding for wells 1 and 2. So that's good news. It's really the only new business, old business that that I was planning on mentioning. Anybody else have anything? Okay, nothing heard. Meeting minutes.
Why does that say postponed?
I haven't completed them yet.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so
I
we
thought I had
shouldn't.
seen them. Yeah.
So we.
So let's not vote on that.
So we shouldn't vote on that.
So I'll take a motion that we're not going to vote on them. Sorry about that, Deirdre. That's my fault. I'm just speeding right along.
I was waiting to see the motion to accept, then we know they didn't read them.
Well, I didn't read them.
I almost
Or
made a
did
motion to accept them. Sometimes I skim them right now, but
They look
Okay,
good.
so yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time tonight. I think that wraps it up for tonight, and we'll talk to you next week.
all right.
If I can get a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.